Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vox Podcast. My name is Mike. My friend Timothy John Stafford is here representing. I wish, Tim, would you take a still picture of this
No.
and put it on the, yes.
Just have everyone use their imaginations.
It is literally if you took my grandma's Afghan, which is different than a blanket, evidently, and you turned it into a shirt. That is what Tim is wearing. I kid you not, it's bright green, purple, light green, darker green, plaid. It is unbelievable. What material is that exactly?
Afghan materials and love.
Afghan material? Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about on the podcast today, but Tim has been particularly troubled. So we want to spend a few moments on Tim's troubled times.
All right.
So, Tim, what's troubling you this week? What's troubling your heart?
Well, this week was a whole hodgepodge. It was a crock pot of different things. The first thing was watching what's his name? Brian Houston, the guy that founded Hillsong. He was on the Today Show, morning Today Show, defending all the controversies of Hillsong, and I don't know. The interview itself was very discouraging for me. I got very angry. We were all texting about it. I don't know. It was that amongst other things. But I was thinking, I need people to convince me of why I should not give up on the church. Or I'm at the point where I feel like I don't want to reinvest. It seems like an aimless effort. And I know that we've talked about it. We've talked about it with Gombas when he's been on.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch of issues in there that I want to pick apart just for a few minutes, just to see, because I'm feeling fairly confident that I am ready to pull the plug.
Well, it'd be great, man. I wish we could get Gombas on the horn. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wish he were available.
Dude.
What?
Dude.
What? Whoa.
How did I get here?
What?
How was I summoned? I was sitting on my patio reading with a cup of coffee, chilling. And I'm here talking to you guys.
Yes.
What is the deal?
Dr. Timothy Gombas out of the ether. Summoned by two wayward.
How have I been so privileged? How is this gift coming to my life? What's the deal?
Well, Timothy Gombas, we have a very troubled young friend in common named Timothy Stafford, who is greatly disturbed by the goings-on of the American church. And
Me too.
And so we've summoned you for rescue, to reorient us towards hopefulness. So I doubt you've seen this, but the founder of Hillsong, are you familiar with some of the scandals plaguing sort of Hillsong?
A little bit, yeah. I've seen
days?
headlines and that sort of thing.
Yes, very much kind of scandal-ridden headlines. And so he gets on. Tim Stafford, do you want to kind of summarize for us some of the salient points of troubling of your heart?
Yeah, I mean, so let me preface all this. This is because this is going to sound very like I've got it all figured out. And
yes.
I'm frustrated they don't. And I'll be the first to say that I have nothing figured out.
Except your wardrobe.
Except my wardrobe. That's the only thing I got going for me. Or not.
No, that thing is awful.
But they're on there. Carl Lentz was he was the pastor. He took over or started the New York chapter of Hillsong, like giant, huge, and it became like a big celebrity hotspot. So like he got real famous for buddying up with Justin Bieber. He baptized him. In the interview on the Today Show, they talk about like one of Houston's defenses of how big the church is that like, don't you remember how crazy Bieber was? Like he was on a path of destruction, and like now he's so much better, and he was about to be deported, but now he's not. And
he was going to be deported.
Yeah, there was like
Like
weird rumors.
is he Canadian?
He's Canadian, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
wow.
rare.
We're
It's
gonna
rare
deport him
we
up
send the
north.
Canadians back. It's
Yeah,
rare.
that's how
Usually,
bad things we're getting.
yeah.
It's
Usually
like this
they.
unruly Canadian.
They do exist.
Yes.
Yep.
Like that former
But
mayor
they-
of Toronto.
Oh snap! There's a callback. Mayor Rob.
Yeah, dude, he was epic.
Go ahead.
man.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Stafford.
But they and so they're talking about he got fired from Hillsong, and then he admitted that he was having an affair, and then they interviewed the lady that he was having an affair with, and she was just like blah blah blah. He would never tell me what he did for a living, just that he worked with celebrities. And the church has like a green room, and he was coming in chauffeured in the morning, and it's just they built a celebrity culture, and it started catering to celebrities. But there's little things in the interview where they talk about like people in the church feeling ostracized, and that some people left the church feeling suicidal, which is bananas to think that is an effect of people going to church, that they left feeling suicidal. And she asks if he feels like the church got too big, and he says, I don't think any church can get too big. We just have to grow into ourselves. And there's like no transparency. She asked him about the green room and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, you really got to protect yourself in the morning before you preach. Like you got to go in there and kind of be prepping your heart and your mind and not being distracted by people. And I just look at all of this. I look at the model. We have a big mega church in our area that tends to swallow up churches. Mm-hmm. Instead of when a church is failing, instead of saying like, hey, we have an extra, like just an enormous budget. Let's help you. No strings attached.
That doesn't happen.
As fellow brothers and sisters and people.
Just like Walmart helps out mom and pop shops.
Exactly. So they consume and they kind of envelop these other churches, and then they become extensions of that church. And it grows and grows and grows. People fall through the cracks. And let me also preface this by saying I realize that we have a lineage of brokenness, right? Like our church lineage is kind of, I mean, how many denominations are there? A gazillion. And they tend to come from like, hey, you're not doing it right. We're going to branch off and start another one. And then we're going to branch off and start another one. And I'm not advocating for the next branch on a, overly weighted down tree. But, when I talk with friends and they're like, you have to, and I know that this is conversations that we've had, is like, you can't abandon the church. You have to be a part of it for the long haul and affect it from the inside. But at this point, sometimes that just looks like a more than full-time job, a completely consuming job of kind of just hitting your head against the wall. And I'm throwing a bunch of questions out there for you guys to just peck at. And the other thing too is, as we've been going through this series of the new creation and the old creation, and what the biblical narrative is, that it would seem like the model of church is not on the right focus to begin with. So in going in, because we have a very like revival, salvific kind of base, like save as many people as you can. If the church itself is even sitting on the wrong foundation, then what would we be going in to try to save it, to like not save it, but like infect it, for lack of a better term, to help affect it, effect it, affect it, if it's already built in a directional model that's facing the wrong way, right?
Yep.
I've got like 9 more things, but I'll stop there.
Dude, I hear you, man. I'm right there with you. Yeah, I feel the same way about the large scale corruption of American, I don't want to say American Christianity, but the American churches in America, the church in America. The capitalism has captured it and has given us all these corrupted models. And I was thinking about earlier this morning, Tim, when you were, just sort of considering some of what you had written about in the email that you sent, and thinking about how it is that like that whole Hillsong situation, like take out of consideration any kind of scandal or any kind of like quote unquote bad behavior or things that are sensationalized. Yeah, the whole thing at its genesis was wrong. It was off. It's a manifestation of like in its bigness and health, quote unquote. and growth and vitality, it is a manifestation of everything that is all the ways that America perverts what the church ought to be through bigness and celebrity and what's impressive and what is spectacular. Yeah, that is all troubling. It's all troubling. It's troubling. The worst case scenario for that model of being Christian in America is that it would work.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like
that's its own justification, is that it is working.
I mean, it's it works, which means it's American and successful, and it cannot help. The only thing that it can do, because it is America on steroids with Jesus kind of sprinkled on top, the only thing that it can do is sort of discourage people that are looking for actual community and actually believe the promises that are given on the surface, and then are degraded or excluded and discouraged. So I'm not surprised, but those kind of cultures, they're very, very impressive because it's all about PR and image maintenance and image projection and management of image. But on the inside, there's a lot of corruption. I have a good friend who was in one of those Seattle churches of that person that you mentioned, of Mark Driscoll. And he's a really, really impressive person. So of course he was a pastor of one of those churches and sort of in the inner circle, and just saw he and his wife saw the corruption and abuse and violence and sociopathic behavior, and tried to kind of leave graciously and quietly, and we're like, yeah, you don't do that around here. We're basically going to destroy you. Yeah. It's just, that's the norm. That's the norm for those big organizations. I mean, I was in one back in the 90s, and in one that would have claimed that they were doing it the best and the most biblical. In fact, they would have denied that they were a mega church. But all those very same corruptions were there. And I just, seeing it up close, was like, wow, what is this all about? What's the point?
Is it an issue of size? Can you still have those corruptions in small churches?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about ambition and control and power and community formation for the purpose of, the glorification of a single individual or of some ideal, and losing track of what the church actually is, a community that fosters the flourishing of everybody that's a part of it, and a community that learns the practices of generosity and reconciliation and kindness and justice doing and all of that. It's really hard to have that kind of a focus. Again, I've just banged my head against the wall to try to figure out how have we gotten off track and what's the genesis of all this. And I can't find any other answer except for capitalism and how it is that we're trying to build cultures of striving and wanting to build and grow and expand. And the genius of how capitalism captures our churches is it uses Bible language to do it.
Yeah.
In terms of growth and evangelism, and outreach and all of those things that we tell ourselves are good. By the way, Tim, when are we going to talk about U2? I've been listening to him constantly for like the last 2 weeks. And this morning I had, was listening to The Troubles, and it's such a genius song because it was Bono singing, you think it's easier to know your own tricks, but it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And it's like, we don't know ourselves, and we don't know how we are actually captive to dynamics of the present evil age and to ambition. Even if our churches are not built around one personality, a church can sort of have a corporate ambition to sort of be big and prominent and all of that, unless we're consciously and self-consciously resisting all of that. But I mean, as far as a positive goes, like, how do we do this? Honestly, I think a wrong approach would be what you mentioned, Tim, that someone has said, like, you've got to stay a part of it and affect change from within. I think that is actually a verbalization of a sentiment that flows from the present evil age as well. That is to say, like, I think that we all have to surrender affecting our communities. I don't affect anything. Participation in salvation and in enjoying salvation is rest, and it's refreshment. It's Sabbath rest. It's liberation. It's not fixing. I don't fix the church. So like, that's the problem when we discern corruptions and problems and perversions and stumblings of our churches. It's like, we want to do something. You want to fix it. I think it's because our impulses are so worldly that we respond to the worldliness of the church with worldliness. Instead of responding by moving ourselves closer to the cross and finding some cross-oriented behaviors in which or with which to sort of access in inhabiting our churches. So like, for the last couple of years, in just learning so much more about all of this and race and social class and the corruptions of America as manifested in my wonderful local city, I've just been going to the church and lamenting, thinking, it's a liturgical church, so we do spend time confessing sin. And I just try to name my own complicity in a culture of violence and try to name my community's complicity in a culture of injustice and lament it. But our church has had some struggles, and we're down to, 65 people on a Sunday, which is still really big. It's a big church if you think about how to look after a community. And especially with reference to the sizes of churches in the New Testament era, I mean, the scale of things in America is so off. It's so off. Although that's an average church in America. The average church size in America is 75, isn't it, Mike? I mean, I don't know the studies.
That's the number I've heard for years. I don't know what's true anymore.
I believe that. But anyway, just to say, I think I've tried, our church has struggled, and they are trying to kind of kickstart these initiatives, to grow and do outreach and all this. And I'm like, who wants to come to this pathetic community? How are you going to like convince people in this area to not go to the beach on a Sunday morning? That's what I want to be doing. And and how do I? Why are we thinking in those terms? I resist all that myself, all that striving and searching and questing, and I just show up and rest. And I know I'm not going to be in that committee. I'm going to show up and enjoy all of you. And I don't know what else to do except to try on the behaviors of what it means to be Christian, even if I'm in a community that can't sort of decide that it wants to do that. But I don't want to affect them. I can't. I'm just me.
Yes. Okay, that's so interesting, because that goes against literally everything I would advise people to do. Because I would say, okay, if you're in one of a toxic church, a celebrity-driven church, flee, first of all. Get the heck out of there. But then the question is, well, what do I look for? And I would say something like a smaller church where there's humility and accountability and transparency and team and, those sorts of things. But it would never occur to me to sit there and rest. It would occur to me to build, to point out. You know what I mean? To like,
sure.
And you're saying that impulse in itself is part of old creation dynamics that have to be warred against.
I think so. I mean, God, Jesus builds his church. I enjoy it. I'm not a builder of a church. Nobody is. And I just was struck a couple years ago by all of the verbs associated with kingdom in the Gospels, and they were all passive. Yeah. So like inheriting the kingdom, receiving the kingdom.
Right.
All those kinds of things, which I thought were really interesting. And it's like, we don't forcefully do anything beyond love your neighbors, beyond play your role as a body part. And so, any body part is doing a whole lot of receiving life from Christ, receiving life from Christ through other body parts. So show up and enjoy, show up and feel the liberation, which is really, that's a lot harder to do because it goes against all the impulses of how we're habituated as American Christians to do, to strive, to build, to affect, to have impact, influence, all that kind of stuff. It's, but who wants to be, what a burden for the rest of the church. I mean, who wants to have that kind of person in your church? I don't want to be around anybody like that who has an agenda for like how this is going to look. I'm like, I'm out. I mean, I know people with agendas for me, and I just try to stay away. Like Kevin, my neighbor from 2 doors down, who I thought about this morning. I walk on my walks. I walk past his house. I try to go back. I try to go by really fast because I know he wants to start conversations with me. He's a JW and wants to make me one, and I'm like, I don't have any interest. I like not being a JW. I'm fine with having Kevin as my neighbor.
Yeah, not John Wayne. Yeah, just to be clear.
No, we are currently of the faith of John Wayne.
Yes.
That's right. No, I'm not talking about the Duke.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So when someone comes into but then, okay, so how's that? I mean, this is so good, and I'm so glad you vaporized out of thin air.
Off my patio.
Off your patio. This was such a worthy interruption. So I work for a church. I teach in a church. I agitate as part of my calling towards, I don't know, at least I envision it as away from old creation identity and dynamic into new creation identity and dynamic. And I realize the greatest temptation is to use old creation dynamics to try to bring about new creation results.
Totally, yeah.
So I'm constantly aware of that. But I sit in this lecture model of, this conception of church. And so I do come up with agenda. You know what I mean? Where does the exercising of gift stay healthy, and where does that cross into power, control, agenda in the ways that you're kind of referencing?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a pastor. I'm just a person. I'm just an average person. I'm just part of my church. I'm not a professional. I mean, I'm not called to be, have responsible care over my church. So I play my role.
Right.
I don't. And, but if I were having a role of speaking, to the church and, pastoring, shepherding, I would, it may involve all those things, Mike. I don't know. I can't really say. It might involve some agitation, but it seems like the end that toward which all of that is directed is trying to get our corporate imagination to the place where we're most effectively receiving the rest and goodness and love and grace and liberation of God. So what community practices put us in the place to receive rest, to receive goodness, to receive refreshment? And they're all counterintuitive. So all the actions that are Christian are counterintuitive. What is restful? It's leisure. Well, actually, according to the gospel, it might be a service activity, where we actually feel blessed when we give stuff away or when we spend time on behalf of others. We receive the life of God by doing stuff like that. Also, we might all corporately have to decide that we're going to do less. We're too busy with busyness stuff and not spending enough time really enjoying each other over common meals routinely enough. Like we just want to spend time together and then enjoying the kind of meals that Jesus fostered in the Gospels, which are inclusive. So let's find some people that, the rules of our culture tell us don't belong here, and let's invite them in and hear their stories. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like, for my part, and I don't know what Tim does, Tim at your church, but I'm just thinking in terms of, instead of, I wouldn't tell somebody, don't check out, stay there and affect change. I would want to say, well, don't check out, or maybe you should and find a different place, but don't check out, but stay there and attempt to be Christian as much as you can discern what that means. you know, which I think it's still possible to be Christian in American churches, but it's a real struggle. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, even with the Carl Lentz stuff, like I don't blame him, because the machine.
Oh, it creates.
I don't know
that
I don't know that his story was avoidable, because the entire machine is built on.
It generates
built on sand. It's literally built on sand, and it's not like I don't see a version in that culture that builds that way that doesn't end there. And so you look at that model, and instead of having this constant like PR damage control cycle that's like, no, this is not what we're about. No, this is not what we're about. No, this is not what we're about. Over and over and over. At what point does the church stop and say, okay, the direction that we're on, the path that has been set for us is, you know, like you look at those graphs in school or whatever, and you start with like the starting point, and one graph is going this way, and then one starts a little bit skewed, you know, and then it slowly turns into a V, where all of a sudden after time you're like astronomically off focus. You started from the same point, but you just kind of veer. That slight little thing, whatever it was, just gets manifested and built and built and built forward. And I look at that and I'm like, man. So the other thing that I sent you that was bugging me this week was the Zondervan's releasing the God Bless the USA Bible with the flag on the cover and the Constitution in it. And I was like, holy crap. How? I mean, I knew we were in a bad spot, but this was like an SNL skit where I was like,
it's got the Lee Greenwood song in it.
That is
God Bless
awesome.
the USA.
Yeah, it's incredible. Someone pointed this out, and I can't not think about it every time I think about that song. That there's a relative pronoun that's wrong. I'm proud to be an American. Where at least I know I'm free. It's like the antecedent. There's no antecedent to the anyway.
To the where? Yep.
I don't want to be a grammar Nazi, but I'm just like, come on. Yeah, man, that's like so all of these instances that you were talking about, Tim, are like extreme. They're just they're, like you said, the natural outgrowths of corruptions that were begun a long time ago. And that's been what I've been trying to figure out over the last couple of decades, is like just going back into history and to find like, where did this all start?
Yeah.
Where, you know, and where I'm currently is just like it was here from the beginning. I mean, all of the European Christians that came here, that came to this land 402 years ago, brought African slaves. I mean, African human beings were brought here just viciously, savagely. I mean, they were savaged by white Europeans in more ways than one. And these were Christians. I mean, how many people? I mean, I was thinking this morning, Tim, that the cases that you brought up are extremes. And what I always try to do is like, all right, where was it apparently safer? Like, what are the less extreme instances that I wasn't alarmed by, but are actually the same thing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just is like, I want to know where I'm not seeing it. Even Jonathan Edwards, I mean, owning slaves, and this book that I'm just finishing on reparations, it's got a powerful quote by Jonathan Edwards' grandson, advocating for reparations, actually, which is really incredible, and talking about the grave sin of slavery and the stain on America that it is. So I'm just thinking, this whole experiment of being Christian on this land needed genocide of native peoples and necessitated also the savagery of African bodies and communities and families. And so it's like, how is this thing not so? How is it not more off? And I mean, it really is. So the celebritized versions of it all, and then also that Bible, that Zondervan Bible, which is just like blatant idolatry.
Yeah, wild.
I mean,
wild.
It's
The
literally
ultimate-
it's literally idolatry.
The
Just-
ultimate American Bible, the Bible and founding documents of America, now together.
It is literally the ultimate American Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pledge of Allegiance.
That's not wrong.
No. Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of
It's so
Independence.
confused. Yeah, the confusion of anything with the God of Christian Scripture is idolatry, and that is, and it's going to further. It will further the, the assumption that the Constitution was just as inspired
Yes.
as Christian Scripture is.
I mean, it's literally saying that by putting it. I'm imagining that the Constitution is running almost as the preface to Genesis.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a way of saying. I mean, it's a way of saying this is what all these documents are all about. They're all about the same thing.
Right.
It's really,
So it's interesting
that
because
is-
I'm tired of the argument with Christian friends. So I have a lot of atheist friends, and some of them know that I'm a Christian, and some don't. And it's not because I'm hiding it. It just hasn't come up in different conversations. And when it does, it's always interesting. But they are very, as they look at the world, they see so many of our societal ills and problems as caused by white Christians. And so they'll come up in conversations about this or that or that or this. And I'll be like, I've said on the podcast a bunch of times, like, I'm not interested in the name. I don't care about names. And I understand that people do, and I respect that. Personally, just me, like, if we lose evangelical to this other belief system, I don't really care. And in a lot of ways, I don't even care about the name Christian, but I'll defend the name of Jesus. And so when those conversations start, and I don't mean defend like I just mean like I'll say, whoa. Everything you're saying is 100% correct. But this faction of people, this church that you're referencing in these different things, you're correct with what they have done and what they have affected in the community, but they are not representing Jesus and how they're doing that. And I just that's a conversation I feel like I'm having all the time. Like, no, you're totally right. You're right. But let me just give you a little bit to say, hey, this is actually what Jesus said, or this is what Jesus was advocating for. This is actually who Jesus was. And this reflection of that has become really whatever that you see. But then with my Christian friends, I feel like I'm constantly just like the examples you just gave. The idea of American Christianity was founded on this really on bloodshed and on the sacrificing of other people's bodies and other people's lives. And we have we've talked about it a million times, so we don't talk about it, but we do have such a mentality of like, well, that was then, this is now. That wasn't me, that was them. And not carrying the weight of that lineage forward of like, yes, this is in our root system, and that affects the tree. And so it's like, how do you like, I don't want to keep fighting all these battles that I don't know that there's fruit to the outcome of the battle. Like I'm ready to just walk away from the fight, not walk away from my faith, but just be like, I just want to do what was intended. And I don't know that this version, this model started from a place of intent or of correct intent. If it's like, I'm not looking for resistance. I'm not looking for, here, I'll make this churchy. I'll give you 3 R's. I'm not looking for resistance or rebellion. I'm looking for like a true repentance. Like I want to like reposture and focus on the correct thing. I don't know that I can do that by just being in a church body.
What do you mean?
Like just attending a church and like being there and hoping that me seeking a new creation model or trying to live in the way that Jesus has intended. I don't know if I'll just be in constant argument, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of do. For me, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I honestly, I'm right where you are. I don't have, in fact, this book on reparations, it's a call to the church to participate in reparations for the past. And it's really, it's beautifully written and really powerful and profound. And they're hopeful. And I feel like, not me. But I know you're saying, Tim, I guess for me, where I've landed, I don't have a theory of any of this. This is just my lived reality. I don't know what else to do personally. I really just don't engage many conversations. I don't have many conversations like this, like that you're talking about. I try to love the people in my church, the people that I'm in contact with at the seminary. And I have surrendered any expectation or hope that anybody will see things my way at all ever. I just don't expect it. That's for my own psychological health. I don't expect people to see things the way that I see them. I've also committed myself to just, I'm seeing things this way, and I'm going to own everything that I think other people should do. Like, Christians should be more like this. And I'm just replacing that term in my sentence with I should be more like this.
Right.
So this is my reading. I'm just reading on race and reading on history and reading on gender justice and trying to engage in as many conversations as I can for my personal transformation. And what's a bummer is there are so many sort of church activities that are going on in our church that are sort of ancillary to like what we should be doing and what we could be doing and what we would be blessed to be doing, because they would be the means whereby we would receive life if we were doing things more focused. But there are some things that we do. Like we're involved in with a charity that helps homeless people get into sustainable housing. So Sarah and I we're part of that. And then also I started volunteer teaching in the jail before we got booted out because of COVID. And then I'm working with this ministry, letter writing to prisoners, because for me, it's like, there are not that many avenues in my church for me to be Christian. And so I kind of feel like that I have to do other stuff and to kind of challenge myself in ways like, in fact, this was about 2 years ago. I was reading Matthew 25, and the things that Jesus will judge all people according to. Did you visit people in prison? Did you clothe the naked? Did you welcome the foreigner? I mean, all of these kind of things. And I'm just like, yeah, all these white middle class Christians aren't doing any of these things. And then I'm just like, all right, how many of these are you doing? In what ways can you sort of point to your life and say, yeah, that they meet these sort of criteria? So I just was like, I can do a little bit of this at my church. My church is interested in doing some of this, but I want to be Christian. I'm going to strive to be Christian, and I'm going to put myself in places where I'm more Christian. And I don't care. I've taken the posture of not caring that other people don't see it that way. I've just given it up because I feel like, and it's not even fellow Christians in America. It's not that it's their fault. And I do think they're culpable, just like I'm culpable, but I see them more as people whom the system has captured and whom the powers and authorities have hijacked and captured, just like all of our lives were sort of captured by the dominant ideology and sets of practices and patterns of life of America. And being Christian is finding ways out of all of that. And I don't know, man, I just, to save my own emotional health, I just engage in as few conversations about all that as possible. I'm just trying to do it for myself. I'm just trying to be Christian, and I'm assuming that all the other people in my life, they have a lot of good that they can offer me, but I don't want anybody arguing me into anything. So I'm not going to argue anybody else into anything. And it's taken me, I've committed to this. I've committed to learn about our white supremacist culture and our unjust culture along gender lines and the injustices of social class. I've committed to learning about it, and it's really hard to see it as what the three of us are, as white men, middle-class white men. It's hard to see it. It's hard to get your head around it. And so it's like, I just realize how hard it is for somebody committed to it. I'm not going to argue anybody else into seeing it who doesn't give a rat's patoot. So I'm like, I just have to save myself.
But isn't there a place? I mean, I'm so with you, but I'm like, isn't there a place for correction? Isn't there a place for like advocacy?
Yeah, sure. I guess. Yeah.
I mean, don't you sit in seminary? Don't you sit in seminary and teach a point of view? Of course.
Yeah. That's right. I talk about this stuff in my classes all the time. I'm just saying, as far as like fellow Christians in my church, if people bring it up and want to talk about stuff, that's fine. I just try to keep myself. Again, I'm not a pastor or a spokesperson.
No, I know.
Figure.
I'm just trying to figure how it plays out, because
I just try to keep myself in a place where I'm not being frustrated with other people and where I'm being a source of life. And if people want to have conversations, let's do it.
Yeah. This is so needed for Tim Stafford. He is so discouraged. No,
do I come across as frustrated?
Does your mom's Afghan have a place on your back right now? Yes. Hey, can I
Proverbs.
Can I shift to one part of the interview that plays along these lines, Stafford?
You can do whatever you want.
Is that what I've been summoned to? Is this an interview? What's the deal here?
This is so good. No, there's a so Brian Houston back on this interview.
That interview.
I've heard a lot. Yeah, this interview. I mean, we surrendered
on the hot seat.
We surrendered any hope of convincing you of anything. No. There's a
I'm blockheaded.
Part of the interview with the lead guy from Hillsong. They brought up their posture towards their gay congregants. And I've heard a lot of good and bad answers, to the question of why do you take a conservative position. This may have been the worst answer I have ever heard. He said, and I'm not even doing him the awfulness of justice, but it was like, hey, we don't represent how we personally think, we represent the Bible.
Yeah.
So it was literally, hey, don't blame us, blame the Bible for this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was literally, with a straight face, he's like, well, we're not,
cool.
I love gay people, but we're just not, we're in a place where we represent the Bible, not represent what we think, which was incredible. And I wanted your facial reaction to that statement.
That's awesome. At least it's super explicitly honest,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like
that's
the Bible.
Really honest. Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
It's like a metaphor for the whole interview.
And it's a metaphor for Christianity, right? Culture war Christianity is this. It doesn't matter what I think or what I'm doing. This is the
Bible's called us to this.
Yes.
These are sort of exclusionary, unkind, unjust modes of being. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It's tremendously unfortunate. Sarah and I were talking the other day about how it is that so much of power-oriented American Christianity, because it is driven by quests for power and prestige and cultural approval, they become evangelicalism is often like made concrete in powerful institutions that always involve hierarchies. And whenever you have these powerful communities and they're not really communities, but these powerful organizations, inevitably there are dynamics of control, and they always are characterized by sexual anxiety and the control, policing of sexual identities and sexual behavior, which always ends up being manifested in the control and power over and domination of women. And there's an obsession in white American evangelicalism with sex. And so Sarah and I how we were talking in the kitchen, just sort of lighthearted. For evangelicals, for conservative evangelicals, it always comes down to genitalia, always. And so we tried to coin a new term. In fact, I was really bummed because I was like, it's like we should start calling them evangenitals.
It's my new punk band.
And then she looked it up, and there was already something. There was already this thing, and I was like, damn it. I
Seriously.
wanted to be.
That's our new podcast.
I was thinking I wanted, to coin that. In fact, there's this long running argument in my family because I have tried to convince Sarah that, all right, this is a lot of vulnerability here.
I love this.
I've tried to convince Sarah that I was the one that invented. I can't say this seriously.
Do it.
That I invented the expression "take a chill pill." I'm sorry. This is the level of our conversation in our house. And I tried to point her to back. I'm not kidding. This is what we get into arguments over. She doesn't believe me. She just won't have it. But I'm serious. I'm gonna hold to that.
Wow.
It was in junior high.
In junior high.
I'm afraid of what you found when you looked up if that term was already being used. The evangenitals.
Yeah, I don't want to Google it. She was like, she texted me this thing. It was a little bit later that night. I was watching a game and she texted me this. I was like, oh my goodness, it's pretty terrifying. But whatever it was, it's too bad. But that's something I think there's a lot. That'd be great fruit for reflection. Like, what is the deal? Why do we feel so powerfully driven to have control over this area of life where there's such mystery and there's so much we don't know and haven't figured out, and in ways that does such damage? I mean, all the damage done to women is just really awful. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah,
totally.
No, it's brutal.
And to say nothing of LGBTQ plus people, the ways that those folks, having already been marginalized powerfully by the dominant culture, many of them having been hurt powerfully by their families, ostracized in many ways, all the wounds that they carry, and then to sort of look at church communities and sort of believe the initial impression that they'll be welcomed and embraced and they'll find places where they can share their story and find healing, and then to only be further wounded. It's just really, it's tremendously tragic. It's yet one further thing that I fear we're gonna face some serious judgment for. I don't know. That's why I feel like I just want to do my part in church on Sunday mornings. I honestly feel like I'm doing my part by confessing sin and just saying very simply while the service is going on, often having my mind wandering, Lord have mercy. Just very simply, Lord have mercy. I've found myself saying this the more history that I read. I dwell among a people with blood on our hands, and I have blood on my hands. And just saying that, and then Lord have mercy, just very simple expressions. And I feel like it's a Christian practice to confess sins, and I want to be Christian. I really do. And I'm not sure that I have the kind of life that can make that claim credibly, but I'm trying. And so one of the things I can do is confess sin. And I'll do that. But
so good. Well, I think we can all agree that you did not invent the phrase "take a chill pill." So I appreciate that confession,
dude.
I've
got data.
I love that you recall to your wife
got anecdotes,
instances where that phrase was used and no one was like, "No, I don't know. I've never heard that, but that's amazing. Yeah. I'm going to steal that." This is what we're doing.
There are very few things that I take very, very seriously. Like, honestly, 1984, I won the summer camp swim championship.
Attaboy.
2007, my intramural softball team won the championship, and I invented the phrase "take a chill pill."
Nice.
That's it. Those are the three things.
Those are That's amazing. Timothy Stafford, what are your three things? I mean, just real quick. I love this.
Oh, I don't know. That's I have to think about it. I constantly have ideas, and then they'll come out. Someone else will make it's usually story ideas, and I'll write them down, and then eventually, like, this movie will come out or this book will come out, and I was like, Oh, there goes another one. Oh, there goes another one. Oh, there goes.
No,
another one.
I know. Years ago, you talked to me
brutal.
about a teenage wizard
That's right. And if I would have
At a
just
place-
jumped on that boat then.
at a place called Blogworts. It was an internet sort of cafe. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
There's actually, there might be a good book in that concept.
Mr. Gombis, we are perpetually grateful for your
Oh, you
friendship.
guys are the best. It's always fun.
And I know, but thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a beautiful day. Don't
It
let
is,
it get
man.
away.
I'm gonna do my best. Man, I had that honestly. Ever since Tim mentioned that we might do these discussions of U2, I've been going. That's all I've been listening to.
We're going to do it. Everybody just got a
And-
teaser for it.
Today, was listening to. I went back and forth a couple times actually between Beautiful Day and Grace, because those are like the bookends for All That You Can't Leave Behind.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just that song. The more I listen to it, it's just so powerful. You know, Beautiful Day, and then and thinking about how it is that that's such a powerfully not sentimental song. It's not like there's a silver lining.
Right.
It's like, no, this life, there's stuff about this life that sucks. It's hard. It's a grind, but there's like this relentlessness of life. And it's not because of like, you know, at the end of the day, we all have it really good. It's because of grace. Grace makes beauty out of ugly things. Grace finds goodness in everything. It's
Don't
just
preach.
like, I was like, I don't know, man. It was a great morning. It was awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, I might have had a tear or two well up while I was walking.
Wow.
I love that, Tim. Anytime you want to talk about U2, let's
We're
do
going
it.
to do it. We're going to do, yeah.
We will.
I want to
we
do some
will
bonus
just-
episodes on the theology of U2, Mike. I was emailing with Tim about it.
I love it. I think that's such a great idea. You guys
Yeah,
need to do that.
I'm jacked
I'm in
up.
for the Pearl Jam version of that. For sure.
Given to Fly.
Yep. Don't call me daughter. State of love and trust. I mean, that is our relationship with Jesus.
I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, Timothy Gombis, thank you.
Dude.
And you are such a great friend. And
You're welcome. You guys are always a blast.
Yeah, appreciate your time today. Thanks for vaporizing.
Cool, man.
So, obviously, Tim had reached out to the other Tim.
What?
But I
don't
know.
reveal. Don't let people see behind the curtain.
I know, seriously. So we were lip syncing. That was it's so freaking challenging every time. I benefit so much, Tim, from the questions that you ask and the ponderings of your heart and other people that we get to be in conversation with. I benefit so freaking much.
Yeah.
So such good stuff. So I had 1,000 other questions.
So do I. I still have a whole list written down, but there's only so much time.
No, there is. And how, for me emotionally, how do I sit in a space where I want to bless? I want to bless the church. I want to bless the space. I want to bless our best efforts. I want to bless the imaginations that I used to have, but now have grown beyond.
Yeah.
Like I want to sit and bless, and yet there's this part of me that is so saddened and grieved by not only what has been in my heart, but by just the carnage that this has wrecked. I don't know how to sit in that space well yet. I just don't. Like
I don't know that you can. I mean, can you? Can you really?
I don't
find...
know. I'm standing in front of a church preaching, and I found myself saying, like unconsciously, things that were coming out of my mouth that were just so cliched because they're just written, they're hardwired in there.
Totally.
And instead of, and I wanted just to stop and say, what I really mean to say is this, but I couldn't. I was out of time, and it's just this weird, like, I don't know what to do.
Well, that's the thing too. Is the with the Hillsong and there just is no transparency. It is only this performative vehicle. It's just everything. It's just so But I was saying when we were just off air, like this is a conversation I'm having literally 2 or 3 times a day, because we want, like, grieving is a great word. I feel an immense amount of grief for, like, it's like having a family member that they just won't correct. They're doing something, and after a while you're just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't, it feels too much.
Yeah.
And I would never say I'm an ex-evangelical or any of those cool. I don't like any titles. So you can throw a million of them out there. I'm not going to take any of them. But
Right.
I want to know how to do this right. And my imagination is like
But
I
isn't
don't think
wanting
my
to do it
imagination
right part of the problem?
I don't know.
Isn't that what
but
Gambus is getting at?
maybe, and I hear what he's saying, but at the same time, and maybe that's something I have to exercise out of myself, but I can't help but look at the world. No, I'll scale it down. I can't help but look at my town and see, if your car's not running correctly, you switch out if you blow a piston or like, you fix it, right? So that it runs correctly. You don't just keep driving it like, well, this is just how it is. Like,
Right.
you fix it. And my imagination has been emboldened over the last 2 years. And so I don't feel captured by anything. I feel like the wonder and the curiosity and that kind of stuff in me is like, it's my heart is pumping hard. And I don't want to miss it. Like, I feel captured by it, and I don't want to, or not captured. I feel my imagination feels like inspired, and it's running, and it wants to grab onto, the robe of Jesus and be like, yeah. Like, like, just keep showing me, man. I want to do this. I want to do this right.
Right.
But I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to do that in the church as it exists. 'Cause like I said, I feel like it's built facing a little bit off the mark. And everything we've been talking about with, like, these cycles of sin. Like, I was just talking with a really good friend who was just about to abandon faith altogether. And it's like, she just can't find, I don't know. There's just too much. And I just want to be like, like what Gambus was saying, maybe this was off air too. Like, you can't answer every question but it's hard. It's all difficult.
It is so difficult. Well, Timothy, your troubled times, I think we all join in. On to business. And by business, I just mean this is sheer
not all
awesomeness.
pleasure and leisure.
Wow. Aaron and Eric came on board this week, so thank you for joining us on the Patreon train. Really and deeply grateful for that. The money that is donated, supported, gifted helps us do all the things, and we're very grateful for that. If you want to kind of hook into that, you can go to voxpodcast.com, or you can go to patreon.com and look up Vox Podcast with Mike Erie, and join us there. And then just a couple of quick comments as we close. We heard from Jennifer, and we read.
Wait, before you go too far, we'd have one thing we have to talk about.
Oh, what? Yes. Yes. What is it?
Stuff that my weekend got out of control, and now I'm just remembering.
Oh.
This is episode 297.
Oh, yes.
Episode 300 is on the horizon, and we are trying to do something, fun and special for that. We'll also be, kind of launching as the new podcast name and all that jazz. So that's in the next couple of weeks. But part of that puzzle is that we want to be talking about the church and the future of the church and hope for the church or whatever. And we want to hear from a lot of people's voices that are listeners, be it like 10, even if it's one word that you have for the future of the church, if it's a 30-second statement or hope or idea or where you think the church is going, but we want to involve this community in that. So next episode, not this one that's today, but next week, we're going to share a phone number that you can call and leave a voice message for us so that we can use your voices on the podcast. So be thinking about that, because we want this to be the whole community. And obviously we can't fit every person on a episode, but we'd like to so try to keep them short, because we'd like to include as many people as we can.
Right. We will give you a prompt question.
Yeah.
We will give you a question to answer, and we want to hear your thoughts.
Just connect. We're on the social medias, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all those fun digital places. But the more you connect, the more we can try to foster and share information and share news and that kind of stuff. So before we closed out today, I wanted to make sure that we planted the seeds for that, because episode 300 is going to be here in like 5 minutes. And then we're sprinting after that.
Yes. So I will give... Perfect. So yes, please, we'd love your thoughts. We'll come up with a really great question, or not. And you can run with that. But we think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
We'll give the last word today to Jennifer, who several weeks ago felt like she was without shelter, and there are still more community responses coming in that we just don't have time to get to today, but we will next episode. Her response to the community was "I loved," and she spelled loved with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 E's and 3 D's. Okay, so very emphasized. Loved hearing everyone's responses. They've definitely made me feel so much better. Is it possible to forward the responses? I'd love to write down everyone's suggestions. Thanks so much for everything. So how cool is that? Thank you all for awesome. For being a part of this thing. So we'll let you go. Thank you for tuning in. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance to you. And in these days, may he give us peace. Amen and amen. Until next time, friends. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erie. Thank you for walking this road with us.